better places. Power to Change is an independent charitable trust that's been granted £150 million by the big lottery to support growing community businesses. We have this money for 10 years. We're only going to be here for 10 years, so we're not trying to displace any organisations that are already there. So throughout the whole process, we're looking for partners to help us support community businesses to develop. And really, what drives us is we've recognised, we did a lot of research before the organisation was set up, and we recognise that communities are really pivotal, particularly in times of crisis. Community groups come together and they start rescuing things that are failing, like shops and pubs and community hubs and all sorts of things that are really challenged in these economic times. And at the moment, although the economy may be improving a bit, there's still a lot of people who are struggling in a lot of communities. And at the heart of those, there is potential for community businesses to take over services. And there's huge potential going forward for communities to become much more resilient through development of really good community businesses and through making existing ones perhaps even more sustainable than they are. So what do we mean in Power to Change by community business? One of the fundamental things for us is that grassroots communities are locally rooted. They're rooted in a place. We're talking about geographical communities more than, perhaps regional communities. We want to know that communities have real heart and are based somewhere that can be quite well defined. And we have to see that communities are in control. They have ownership. If we're working with communities, we want to know that they're truly accountable to local people. And this kind of accountability can take many forms. We don't support a particular kind of legal structure for a community business, but we like to see that the board is accountable to their community. There might be membership, there might be volunteers involved, real representation on the board, but somehow throughout all of the community businesses doing, they are always consulting with their community, taking on board what they're saying, and the community has a say in shaping how the business moves forward and what it does. Critically important is that the work a community organisation does, a community business is doing, is benefiting the community in which it sits. Perhaps through a particular project, it may be supporting a few individuals or developing some employment, but we need to see there's wider benefit to a wider community. And critically important, the businesses should be trading. We recognise that a lot of communities are still quite grant dependent, but we like to see that they're beginning to earn their own money so that they can reinvest it back in developing their own businesses, becoming sustainable, and actually supporting their communities through doing that. So what do we mean, really? Well, what makes up community businesses, and how can they achieve better places? What we really want to see is organisations that are tackling economic and social problems, and you as community organisers will know so well some of the challenges that your communities are facing with the loss of a lot of services and people feeling really probably not very optimistic about the future. And we hope that community business can really generate hope and make places more resilient by communities owning businesses that meet the needs that communities themselves have defined, and build up the capacity of individuals as well as groups of people to run organisations, and give real pride and satisfaction to communities. This is something I've seen a lot. I was once the development officer for a small island, and we ran a whole series of projects that involved different people. And for me, one of the most rewarding things was seeing individuals recognising the talent and skills they had and beginning to be able to use them and sit around the table and be recognised by others. And it's a wonderfully satisfying thing for me, from where I sit, to see that kind of thing happening. And I'm sure you've seen this. when you've been working in communities, that people will suddenly step up and start taking control. A very important thing is the broad social impact of any particular business. It may do one thing, but what it does may impact on another part of the community. And the more positive that impact can be, obviously, the more important it is. And a very significant thing is how working with community businesses, you engage so many people and you develop a real sense of community cohesion that facilitate people getting together and talking to each other, and a real neighbourliness that reduces isolation and makes a much better feeling of sort of well-being in a community. We have 3 overarching objectives. They are growing the whole community business sector, transforming places through developing community businesses that enable places to improve, and then finally making the case, proving to people that this is something that is, community business is something that should be sustained. So in the first 3 years, we're looking at growing the sector. And we have in place already, just started in about February this year, an initial grants program of between 50 to 500,000 pounds for communities. And what was recognised very early on from research that we did is often communities, and this is something I'm quite sure you'll recognise, communities start out, they get very enthusiastic, they get a little bit of money just to set themselves up as an organisation and begin to do a little bit of training. And then they kind of sit for a while, and it's really hard. They need more grants to keep going. And for a few years, perhaps, a couple of years, they could do with inputs of sums of money, usually sort of 50 perhaps to 75,000 pounds of revenue funding. And then perhaps they'll have other projects. If there was enough money to perhaps expand a facility, they would become much more sustainable. So this is where this funding is focused. And it's been a real learning process for us. Initially, the grants process started in February, and we actually put a hold to it in July because about 75% of the applications were coming were not from what we defined as community businesses. So we've been much more careful about defining those 4 criteria I described earlier to make sure that the right kind of organisations were applying. And subsequently, we've had mostly applications, very good applications, from a range of legitimate community businesses. And we're learning all the time from this process, and it'll inform how the next grant goes forward. So the applications are only open until the 22nd of October. So if you're aware of anyone who's thinking of applying, they're going to need to move quite quickly. What we actually look for in grantees is, in people we give grants to, is what the potential impact on long-term sustainability is of the proposal that somebody is putting forward. We need to see how that project will actually make an organisation more sustainable. In the initial grant program, it's within 18 months. In the long-term business fund, it will probably operate on a single basis. So we're looking at the similar basis. So we're looking for communities that already exist or are very close to being able to get moving and become sustainable. We look very closely at the potential impact of a business to deliver wider benefit to the community. And it's really important that people express in their applications what they think the social, or what they believe the social impacts will be, what the environmental impacts will be, and what the economic impacts will be, both to those who benefit directly from the project and those in the broader community who are perhaps more marginalised, how the project is inclusive. And we're very keen to help the actual management teams of organisations develop, and we need to see that in an application that there's a strong management team that is representative of the community it serves, and how accountable it is. So it's very important that people express when they're putting in an application how they communicate with the wider community, how the wider community has an opportunity to input into what the organisation is doing. And now I'm going to talk through some examples of successful grant organisations. The Anglers Rest Bamford Community Pub received an award for actually putting some energy improvements. I think it was probably solar panels, and that helped them reduce their overheads. And it's a fantastic example of this. There's community ownership in the fact that a lot of people invested their own money in buying the pub. It's not only a pub, it's also a community hub because it houses the local post office and a cafe. It's a fantastic place for people to come together. They bump into each other, they meet, deliberately go there. So everybody can keep an eye on each other. It employs local people. And we supported this because it was just a last brick. Our contribution to the energy costs enabled this project to reduce the ongoing running costs of the whole pub and make it more sustainable. So that's one example of something that covers all our bases. Just going back, the fact that local community had contributed their own money was a point of leverage for us. We're always looking for ways to make our money go further and what us putting money in can do to bring in other money to support a particular project. Now, the White Rock Trust in Hastings, big and very, very ambitious project. I'm just grabbing a piece of paper which will tell me how much we actually contributed to this. Over £300,000 we put into this project, so on a different kind of a scale. There was a huge consultation process that went on about this project because it's covering a whole area of development. It's creating affordable workspaces so that people can have start-up businesses. It's providing community facilities that are of benefit to the whole community, and it's providing affordable homes to those who are on lower salaries and are finding it difficult because housing is a huge problem. And what it's doing is supporting the regeneration of the whole area. So this is another example of a really rooted community business where there's evidence because of the membership of real community ownership and control. This money that we're putting in has enabled another sum of money to be brought in, so there's good leverage in making our money go further. And this organisation is just ready to roll and take things forward. And another example of another kind of thing we support is Kiveton Park and Wales Community Development Trust. Wales, by the way, is a small ward of the area in part of Rotherham. It's not on Wales. Our funding is focused in England. In this particular case, the money is being used to restore a derelict football pitch. The organisation has been running for some time, and it was looking for different ways to create revenue to enable it to provide a whole range of different services. And it hit on the idea of developing its football pitch. It could be hired out to a whole range of different community members. And as you'll see, it's going to support something like 9,000 plus users. It's got very clear evidence because it's written into its constitution that the majority of trustees have to be local residents. It levered in other money and a lot of local effort as additional support for this project. So it covers all our bases, and it shows a different kind of activity that communities can bring together. And I'm sure you'll be aware of all of these different kinds of things and a lot of the work that you're doing. So these are all examples of the kind of things that get our support. Just a little bit about the grant-making process itself. The initial grant program has been something that we've done in-house, and how it works is it's a short application form which is found online, and it's reviewed by 3 different people who will then come together to decide whether the project is taken forward or whether it doesn't quite meet our criteria. It's really, really competitive. We've got a colossal number of applications coming through in growing numbers as the deadline looms. And it's so important, I'm saying this again and again, for people to be very, very explicit about how the community is accountable, how the organisation is accountable to the community, and what the impact, social, environmental, and economic really needs to be spelt out. If a project gets through to the next stage, it goes forwards for assessment, and it's quite a rigorous process. The finances are examined very carefully. Visits are made to the organisation. We have been working with the social investment business in this first phase, and one of their assessors goes, and sometimes a member from the Power to Change team comes too, to get a real feel for the organisation. We also offer at the same time business development support, because we may find that a community perhaps needs to develop its business plan a little further. We may decide that the amount of funding being asked for isn't quite enough, because there needs to be more to help the organisation get to a state where it's really investment ready. Or we may feel that actually to do the essential work is slightly less than's being asked for. And then finally, after the assessment, the whole thing is put toward to our board, and our grants committee makes a final decision. So it's quite a long process, but it's quite rigorous. And then, as well as grant funding, I mentioned we give business development support, and that at the moment is being delivered by a number of organisations we're working in partnership with: the COLtd, which you will know very well, the Plunkett Foundation, Unlimited, and Regeneris. So we've been working very successfully with them, and they've given particular support to take grantees through the whole process. Another thing that I think you will all appreciate is peer learning and skills development, how important it is to work with others who are doing the same thing as you are, and share your skills and tell each other about what you're doing. I think it's, certainly in my experience, working with others, other communities, or you find somebody always who's done it before and can give you advice. And we're trying to develop the kind of networks that will enable that kind of peer-to-peer support. And that includes setting up advice or some training programs for leaders of community organisations. I'll talk a little bit more about that. Other things we're doing as we go on, we've learned a lot, as I said. I talked about the missing middle grant funding to take communities forward. Something we've discovered through the initial grants program and from talking to people is actually there's some need much earlier on in the process, and again, you will recognise this so well, just to give people confidence and support. If individuals aren't able to step up and participate in community businesses, and community businesses themselves need to grow and develop their skills and confidence, that little bit of support needs to be there. We're looking around for organisations to give this very early level support and establish partnerships, and we'll decide who we'd like to work with probably next year, and we'll be sending out invitations to tender describing what that work will be. We're also looking into sector-focused partnerships, and this is all about how we get more assets into community ownership, and we'll be looking at a couple of particular sectors. There might be things like community ownerships of pubs to turn them into community hubs, and perhaps looking into community-led housing or community energy. We're exploring which of the areas we can most effectively help. And in each case, it's trying to find ways of giving early stage support to take communities to a point where they can take on assets effectively. We're also looking into improving access to capital. We are looking at using our funds in different ways. So finding ways of not just giving grant funding, but making capital available through loans and accessing community shares. I've got a colleague called Jed Devlin, who's based up in Sheffield, who's done a lot of work in community shares, and many of you may have come across him. And we'll be looking at how we can make our funds go much further by joining up with other organisations and social investors to make sure that communities have access to kind of funding that they need. We're doing work on resource and support mapping and signposting, developing perhaps a tool or a kind of trip advisor, if you like, where communities are able to find lists of advisors in any area of support that they need, whether it's quantity surveying, whether it's business development, whether it's in marketing. And we hope to develop that as we move forward. We've put out a tender and we have an organisation working with us now to do that. I talked a little bit about peer network funding. We have at the moment an invitation to tender out for Community Business Leadership Programme, a programme of working with, as I said earlier, business leaders to develop their skills so that they're more able to make their communities more sustainable and have links among themselves to support each other. And finally, we're going to be spending some money to develop an innovation fund just to support really innovative ideas. And we look forward to telling you more about those towards the end of the year. Right, moving on to another one of our objectives. Beg your pardon. Had a bad cold, so I hope I'm not too snuffly. We're looking at identifying or putting quite a lot of investment into places, particular places, and we're looking to have a couple of pilots, one in the north, one in the south, to identify how we can really find good models for generating lots of community businesses that spawn other businesses, and what on the ground wraparound support needs to be there to get things moving. These pilots will emerge over the next few months to find the best ways to communicate everything we've learned. This will be the final phase, sort of third of the project, to gather all of the information that we've got to inform all the people that can make decisions to try and embed community businesses as something that are the presumption that everybody makes a presumption in favour of community business. It's not a last resort. It's the first place you go. We would love to see that happen as a result of the work we've been able to do over a 10-year period. So we want to be able to inspire and make people more aware of what's going on, increasing the recognition of the whole concept of community business, and as well as amplifying the national impact by getting everybody to work together. We're actually advertising, or not advertising, we're recruiting at the moment for a lead for a research institute so that everything we do is underpinned by really good research. And potentially we're looking at a community business leadership fellowship to have a kind of leadership academy where we can really develop key leaders for the community. And that really is a whistle-stop tour of what we're doing. So we're really hoping to engender a kind of ongoing and real community engagement and consultation for everybody throughout the whole process we're working through. And the kind of role you play is so important in alerting to people that our funding is available, that there are all of these opportunities, and your role in just generating and exciting people and allowing them to believe that all of this is possible is fantastic. And I'd be interested to know really from you how you feel what we're doing can support you. And I wish you all well in your roles. And I'm going to keep quiet now. Thank you for listening.
Okay, firstly, I'd like to say thank you to Rose for your excellent contribution and presentation today. Nick, would you like to come back?
Just want to echo that thanks and say what an inspiring presentation that was, and I think for many organisers out there a real reinforcement of that other people are working in this field and keen to support the types of work that they're encouraging. It really, for me, was really interesting to hear about this early stage support for community organisations that are taking control of community assets, or that could take control of community assets. We have just been successful, being awarded the contract to manage a fund on behalf of Cabinet Office and DCLG to look at and explore the link between community organising and community rights. So as part of one of our webinar series that we're having, one of those webinar series will be community organising and community rights. So as part of that fund, we're going to be looking at how can we support communities to take greater control of their assets, but how can they use the community rights in that process. So it'd be interesting to see where maybe some of these three things can start to join together. What's really interesting as well is from the many conversations that I've had with some of the people that are even in this room, and I think there'll be many questions that they've got, or many anecdotes or stories that they can share about currently what they're doing around community business as well. And I know that some people are here, so hopefully you get the opportunity to share your stories and share some of the things that you're thinking about around how you can develop and support innovative, sustainable and locally rooted community business through community organising and through the work that you're doing. So I'll drop the microphone and we'll open it up to the floor. Dave, back to you.
Yeah, okay, what we'll do is we'll open it up for questions and people, if they want to just contribute anything towards what you've heard already. For those of you that are used to using this system, I think what we'll do is ask for you to put your hands up if you have any questions or anything you want to contribute. And then when you take your turn on the mic, when you put your mic down, we can give Rose and Nick an opportunity to come back and reply to what you say. So please, if anybody has any questions or anything they'd like to add at this time, if you'd like to put your hand up. Okay, Caroline, if you'd like to just grab the mic and ask your question.
Hi, I hope people can hear me okay. I'm going to read out the question I typed. Just going back to the question of trading for organisations in the early stages who haven't got a lot of money to trade with, are developing goods, sort of skills-based services. Does your concept of trading include the concept of skill swap, trading of goods, services, knowledge and expertise?
Caroline, we really do mean trading money, buying or delivering services and getting income for it. However, the effort, sort of sweat equity, if you like, people's use of their knowledge and expertise to contribute, give time to a project could be considered leverage. So, for example, a community in Crosby Ravensworth, there were 4,000 people hours of effort that went into redeveloping a pub, and that was considered part of the leverage. It was valued at, perhaps, I don't know, one could probably value it at the minimum wage. So when you don't have a lot of money to put into projects, time actually does count.
Thanks for that, Rose. I'm also thinking along the lines of one group I'm working with at the moment are increasingly getting people who can't volunteer in certain ways. An example of two groups that are crafters and knitting and making things, which are a mixture of items to donate through a food bank and other items to run craft stalls to raise money. So it's very, very early stage trade and development based on the skill swap concept being developed in parallel.
I guess that skill swap does have a value. I'd have to look into that a bit, perhaps, and get back to you. But if you can quantify how the value of that craft that is being offered contributes to your overall project, I'm sure it could count.
Okay, thank you, Caroline, for that question. Gemma, if you'd like to take the mic.
Hi, can everyone hear me? Hi everyone, hi Rose. I'm just going to tell you a bit what I've been doing, and I don't know, I'm trying to think of a few questions along the way where I'm talking about, so hopefully you might be able to give me advice, or I might be able to form questions. But what I've been doing is actually listening to local businesses. I work in an area that's got one of the highest deprivations in the country. Businesses are slowly going out the area. There's not much shops. There's low employment, high unemployment, not much money in the area. So what I've done is listen to businesses, ask do they recruit locally, what do they think of the area, what things would they change, what the challenges they're facing these local businesses. So I've just received about 50% response rate, and from that I'm trying to build. I've got an event to plan out on November the 25th of a community forum for businesses, so where they address those issues together and move forward. I'm hoping as a community forum for businesses. So that's the plan there, and I'm looking at the funding. Would that be something, if they establish, would they be able to apply to? And also I've just been nosy as well, looking at your website. I know that you said as well there was a Sheffield office. Would it be possible as well to get a contact to come along for that date as well, to talk to businesses where Power for Change could help these businesses move forward to address local issues? Because some of these, I've done the analysis, the pie charts from the listenings and outcomes, and a lot of them are saying that things like they would like to recruit local people, but money finds an issue. Things like the environment they want to change, bring people our way. And also as well, this afternoon I'm going to a small business centre just around the corner from where I work, and they have a gym, community gym and things like that, and they're selling off business, so it looks like a community asset transfer as well. And I'm looking for options as well for them, so looking at if they want to take it over. And I also work for a funder, but they're mostly focused on social enterprise at the moment. So I'm looking, and that's one of the avenues, and saying what they could do as well, and then moving that forward with them. So is that possible area for yourselves that could help with it? It would be great if I could have that Sheffield contact as well, and be interested to have that link working with yourselves with the work I'm doing. Sorry for the long conversation.
With regard to the community forum, by all means ask. If you look on the website under the team roles, you'll see contact people. The person you should contact is Jed Devlin, and if he is available, he may well be able to help with that. Or perhaps there's a gathering of community organisers in the northwest or Sheffield or Manchester area where people are working, where they could attend. But certainly all of the things you're talking about potentially could be supported by Power to Change.
Hi Rose, would you be able to repeat the beginning of that conversation, because I think your mic went very quiet for a while there. So I think you mentioned a contact or somewhere on the website to find some information, but I don't know if everybody picked it up.
Our website is www.thepowertochange.org.uk, and I think there's an About Us page, and then if you look at our team, there's pictures and a list of everybody. You'll see what I look like if you go there, and there is a contact in Sheffield called Jed Devlin, and you can contact him through the website. And there are actually 4 of us based down in the southwest at the moment, based in Bristol. Bonnie, Fergus, Jenny and myself, and we all have different areas of expertise, but our email contacts are there.
Okay, thank you for that, Rose. Nicola, do you have a question?
Hi, yes, I'm a bit croaky, so apologies. I'm interested in investment as well as grant funding, as we feel that our current business would have a good return on investment long term. So when you spoke about social business investment, my ears pricked up a little bit. And I wondered how it would be different from the SIFIs coming out of the LEPs, because we looked at that briefly and we felt that individual investment would change the dynamic of a community-run organisation. So I just wondered if you could just elaborate on that a little bit. Thank you.
Hi, Nicola. It's a little difficult for me to elaborate on that at the moment because we recognise the sensitivities, and work is going on at the moment to investigate how we go about creating that social investment and how we partner with people to deliver it. And certainly working through the LEPs might be a way of doing that. So watch the space, really. All of those kind of strategies and programs will be made clearer towards the end of the year. So sorry I can't be much help at the moment.
No, that's fine, thank you. I was just a bit confused as to whether that was currently part of the offer or in the future. So you've answered the question. Thank you very much.
So are there any more questions that anyone would like to ask Rose while she's here? Hi Rose, I do see one question that was in the chat box a while ago. Is there any presentation video that we can show to our community leaders?
There are a couple of short videos on our website that talk about the nature of community business and give some examples of some successful organisations that are supporting that. That may be helpful. There isn't this particular presentation, but I hope the slides will be circulated and be of use.
Okay, Tom, did you have a question?
Hey, yeah, thanks a lot, Rose. It's really interesting to hear about all the different kinds of projects that have been supported and all the great stuff that's going on. Up in Newcastle, we're using a membership model of community organising, so we're kind of owned and run by our members. And I think in the long term, we'll be looking at some of the community rights things and possibly around housing. But at the moment, we're not trading as such other than the members that we have who are paying in a monthly amount of money. And I'm wondering, would that count as trading in terms of the funding that you guys are doing? Thanks.
I don't see why it shouldn't. You're bringing in an income that's enabling your organisation to function. So that's trading, yes. So go for it.
Okay, Nick, did you want to take the mic?
I think that what Tom just presented there is a really interesting situation, because actually when we think about sustaining community organising, and Rose, it'd be good to get your perspective on this. Community organising inspires individuals it goes out knocking on doors and talking to people and gets them to think about what projects they might want to get involved with, or what campaigns or what initiatives at a local level. And it's before the early stage support. It goes way before that. It's that kind of preemptive early stage support, nurturing people with ideas. When people have got ideas, they go out and they develop networks, and those networks can be turned towards supporting community organisation, and we've seen many examples of that. But I think what Tom has just described there is actually about how communities themselves, and we see models of this around the world, where communities themselves come together to fund the work of a local community organiser, community builder, or community development worker. Now, that in itself is quite an interesting model, and I think, I don't know if any other organisers have explored this, but I think that it's something which could be developed and something which could be explored in other ways as well, potentially, through the development of local enterprise. Nicola, I know, has lost her voice, but Nicola has been, certainly through the work that they do within Stockport, and there's a local enterprise there that supports the work of the organiser to do that early stage preemptive support, so that the community business itself doesn't just become a service delivery organisation, but it becomes a facilitator of wider community involvement and a facilitator of further ideas and support to create and nurture new community business at a local level. So I think Rose may have lost her sound, so I don't know if you've heard that or if that has been lost.
Hi, Tom. Did you want to come back and say anything to what Nick just said?
Hey, yeah, I guess I don't have too much to add. I think it's just a really interesting question in terms of how do we sustain the organising work, and that what Nick was describing is that kind of very earliest interactions with people when they might not even have thought they could run something themselves before someone's come and asked them. Yeah, and I think, so I see Caroline's written in the text box about many people can't afford the cash to be members but donate kind of time and skills and energy. I think that's totally true. I think not everybody is able to contribute financially, and I think it's really important that other ways of contributing in that sense are valued and are important. I guess we are also fairly upfront that we require funding as an organisation to keep the work going and to keep that outreach work going, because I think it's hard to get people to do pure organising work without paying them to do it, at least in a kind of long-term and sustainable sense, is my feeling on it. But yeah, so kind of interested in what other people think. I think if there was a way to run a business that could contribute to this kind of community building, community action side of it, it didn't just become everyone's energy going into running the business, because I know businesses are obviously very hard to run. Yeah, so I think it's an interesting question around what do we do to sustain the kind of work that we're doing. Thanks.
Hi, Nick. Rose is back now. I didn't know if you just wanted to pre-say that and just repeat some of it so Rose knows what the discussion was.
Yeah, certainly. So the discussion was, what Tom presented was a model of organising which is around encouraging and building real local accountability, but also in developing networks of people who can finance and resource the work of the organiser at a local level. And I also said that, in addition, there are models where, met some of the organisers, and certainly conversations I had with Nicola, around actually how can you get local community business to support organising in its broadest sense, and that was actually where there's something in community organising which is about nurturing, inspiring, and preempting those people who might have a business idea or who might have an idea to transform their community. So it's not just about working with a service delivery organisation or a community business that is delivering a service, but actually it's about that wider encouragement of people to get involved. So the community business becomes almost a facilitator of other people's ideas, enabling them to come to fruition, try, test it out, and develop it and nurture and inspire it. It's that, you talked about early stage support. I think this is pre-early stage support, and actually encouraging people to take ownership and develop their own ideas. So I think what Tom and others are presenting is quite an interesting situation where community business becomes a facilitator of community involvement in a really broad sense. So it'd be interesting to get your take on where you see community organising in terms of community business based on what's heard. But I also see Penny's got a question as well.
Quickly to that, I completely agree that community business is there to inspire others, and saying that we recognise that early support is there's kind of pre-support that's necessary, and some of the place-based stuff that we hope to do is really exploring how that might happen and how it could be supported. Somebody used a wonderful analogy the other day in talking about a kaleidoscope. You know those toys you used to have where you could shift the cylinders and suddenly everything would line up in different patterns. There are an awful lot of people out there. If we could get different organizations to work together to create patterns of support.
Thank you, Rose, for that answer. Penny, did you have a question?
Hi, good morning everybody. I do have a question, and it's along the same lines of what you've just been talking about, really. So I'm a community organiser with Community Roots, CIC. We see ourselves as a community business, a trading community business that has services to deliver. We're grassroots specialist engagements, and we have had commissioned pieces of work, so we are trying to work towards less grant funding and more generating our own income. So I guess my question just goes along to support what other people are saying, really. But yes, we do engage with people in the community. We do enthuse them and support them and encourage them to be creative and to get things going, whether that's activities, events or social actions, whatever it is. We have a community holding team here in Cheltenham. They're really, really keen to keep organising with them. And so we're really, really keen to see whether the power to change is something that we should be thinking about applying to as a community business of community organisers. Hope that makes sense. Thanks very much.
Penny, it does make sense. It sounds like you're the kind of organisation that could apply. What's really important is that you define your geographic area of benefit and make it clear, you know, how you meet that community location, place criterion. It sounds as if you're just based in Cheltenham. That is quite a big area. If you were doing something specific, how would it bring about that broader benefit? But keep an eye out for the kind of the new program that's coming up in the new year, because that might create some clearer ideas of how we can support perhaps your kind of organisations.
Okay, thank you, Rose and Penny. Caroline, did you have something to add?
Hello, it's an observation and a question, really. I like the analogy of the kaleidoscope and the idea of patterns of partnership, and I'm wondering where power sits in that and how the implementation of this grant helps sort of maybe redistribute some of that power. Working with a lot of individuals and small grassroots organisations and listening to their ideas, when they try to engage with some of the power holders, we see time and time again that they are then written in as partners in joint funding bids, with the expectation that any funding then goes to the key gatekeepers with no consideration in many cases to sustainability funding to enable those smaller partners who are actually fundamental to the implementation in having some sustainability funding drawn down from that. When you visit groups, do you look at this and do you ever tweak and make suggestions about ensuring smaller partners not only get a huge amount of the work out of the future programme, but a reasonable distribution of the money that's allocated?
Caroline, I hear you. We're working, I talked about us looking at particular sector support, and we're developing that at the moment. And it depends very much on organisations working together. And, we're aware that perhaps sometimes the usual suspects always seem to get the grants, and we want to try and find a way of ensuring with our grant making that it is as inclusive as it can be. And sometimes, there will be strings attached to try and ensure that happens. As I said, we're still in the process of developing how this works and seeking advice. If there is a particular aspect we should be looking at, let us know. We want to hear.
Hi Nick, do you have anything to add to this?
No, just I think a massive, a big thank you to Caroline for asking the question, and a big thank you to Rose for being so open and saying actually how open you are to ideas. I do think that people will start now to look at how they can engage with the power to change, not least in ways which as Penny described, or as Penny's exploring, but also in ways which Caroline suggested as well, which might be that actually we start to look at how they can influence and support the power to change, to think about how it distributes funds within communities, and just to give a community organisers perspective as well from a local level. So thank you to Rose for encouraging and welcoming that.
Okay, do we have any more questions or anybody who'd like to add anything to the conversation? Okay, well, firstly, I'd like to thank everybody for attending today. I'd especially like to thank Nick and Rose for giving up their time, and especially Rose for being so honest and open today with us, and making us all realise how organising can link in with community business and certainly the power to change. I will be distributing a recording of this webinar and also the PowerPoint presentation that Rose gave today, and making sure that you all receive a copy of that. Again, I'd like to thank Rose, and I don't know, Rose, if you'd just like to say a farewell.
Well, so much for listening and for your very interesting questions. I hope you found it useful. Power to Change has impressed me by its willingness to learn and understand from what it's hearing. So we'll do our very best for you. Thank you.
Okay, and again, thank you to everyone for attending, and please look out for the rest of our community organising and webinar series. Thank you, everyone.
Rose, before you go, and while everyone's in the room, when your new funding streams come out, could you let Dave know, or any consultations that you're undertaking as well, if you let Dave know, because we can make sure that they're distributed across our membership so everyone is aware of what's happening on the back of this webinar. Thank you.
You do that. You can all sign up to our newsletter on our website, which might be a good way of keeping abreast of what's happening.